Thank you, Nikita. That was definitely quite informative. Let me share. Okay, I hope my audio, visuals, and the presentations all visible. Okay. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Sharanya. For those of you who have just joined us, and yeah, let's get right into the final part of this series and talk about where to publish your research. Um, Firstly, there are different kinds of research writings, but for like with the other sessions, we will continue to talk specifically about journal publications itself. So this question of how do we actually find journals, where do we publish our work, is something that you have also mentioned within your mentee responses, and that is exactly what I hope to cover uh, within this session. Now, to answer the question of where to actually publish, we will begin by actually talking about what kind of journal publications there are. Then we will go into the different ways in which we can find journals, and then to actually narrow it down and find a journal that is a right fit for you, for your research itself, right? We will also touch upon how to assess the credibility and quality of a journal, which again leads us to the question of predatory journals and how we can avoid them. So that's what we will be talking about. Okay, so before we start a search for journals, we need to firstly understand the different kind of publication models that actually exist. Now, I've put up in front of you a very basic and broad categorization. Now, keep in mind that this is in no way like mutually exclusive as such. So, essentially, we can understand publishing in terms of like, okay, there are journals can either be print publications or online publications. Sometimes journals publish both print and online copies, right? So print publications traditionally run on traditional publishing models. Um, so that usually requires subscriptions from the readers. So here readers or institutions actually pay for access to the research, right? To access the research. Online publications are on the rise day by day. We have all actually come across different kinds of online publications within our research work when we are studying. And we have come across online publications that are also subscription based, right? That are behind the paywall. So again, here the reader pays or institutions pay for access, or they can be open access. Open access model is where publications are freely available, accessible to the readers. Um, Now, there are actually many different kinds of open access models, but I just want to talk to you about a couple of those models. A gold open access model is where publications are freely accessible for the readers, but authors bear the charges. So authors pay a publication charge for their work. And this is one of the things that also came up in the Menti responses, right? That publishing a work means paying high APCs, especially within big corporations, big names. So authors pay charges. APCs is article processing charges for those of you who might not be familiar with them. Um, On the other hand, Diamond Open Access is a sort of a radical model where neither the readers nor the authors pay for the publication. But funding is rather received from other stakeholders. It can be in universities, it can be institutions, other grants, governments, different patrons. Um, so within Diamond Open Access, the neither the readers nor the authors themselves pay as individuals pay. Now there is also a hybrid model, the hybrid journals, which is a mixed model of sorts, where some publications can be behind a paywall, so readers pay there, um, and authors can choose to pay ABCs to actually publish their work as open access. Now, authors can actually choose to pay this to increase the visibility of their work, right? When you have open access, more people can actually read and share your work. So that ensures that visibility is increased. So authors can choose to pay. Like I mentioned before, there are various different models of publishing, whether it is under open access or otherwise. But what we need to firstly understand is the logic behind publishing models themselves, so that we are actually aware of what model, what publishing model the journals that we are going to submit to, the journals that we come across function in, right? Knowing this kind of differences actually helps us in making decisions on where we would like to publish our work. Now, yeah, we will continue to talk about what this might mean, what these considerations might be. But yes, for now, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the different approaches we can take to actually find journals to publish in our book. For those of you who were there last week, you would remember that Faizan had mentioned that there are tens of thousands of journals today. And even within your particular discipline, there would be, again, thousands of journals. So, how do you actually find a journal that aligns with your own work? So let's try to keep it simple. We can go about looking for journals themselves, or you can actually go about looking for call for papers to submit to, right? To find journals that fit into your research area, you might try, for example, a basic Google search. You might look through like lists of journals within different directories, within different indexes. A lot of times we come across journals within our particular fields through recommendations from our professors, from our peers, from our academic circles in general, right? Um, or yes, even when you're conducting your research, even when you're studying, when you're reading upon your field, you come across papers and maybe a journal's name pops up. You can actually be more conscious of this process and start looking up journals that has published articles that you actually like. Look at who's doing the publications, who are actively publishing papers that align with your own areas of interest, right? Areas of research. So that way you actually start becoming familiar with journals that are accepting submissions within your own field. Another approach is to actually look for active call for papers that align with your research. Now, there are various databases where CFPs are posted, so going over them can be helpful. There are also like different academic forums, different groups where news of CFP, but also other news like publications, other conversations that are happening within your academic field might take place. So it's actually a good idea to be a part of these groups so that you can actually keep an eye out for what is happening, who is accepting submissions, what kind of research is being done. So those are really helpful resources. Yes, when I talk about academic forums, I don't just mean online forums, but also like social media pages, communities, WhatsApp groups. You might already be part of these like social academic circles, right? So think about how you can make use of those. There's also different mailing lists on particular topics that you can actually sign up to so that you can receive updates from your academic communities. Now, something to actually note here is that it's not always the case that you write a paper and then find a place to publish, like Nikita mentioned, right? CFPs are open for at least 3 to 4 months, sometimes even more. And this was one of the issues that came up within the mentee responses also, that finding, like figuring out deadlines of CFPs can become problematic, that can cause issues. Now, searching for CFPs, keeping that deadline in mind, yes, that is an issue, but you can also think about how you can find CFPs to start working on a paper, to respond to particular calls that actually call to your research work, right? So this approach of like actually searching for CFPs might be helpful for you to start working on your paper in that sense as well. On the other hand, if you already have a paper or at least your abstract ready, one approach that you may also take is to actually find journals using journal finders or journal matchers. Now, these are services provided by big corporations like Wiley, Clarivate, Taylor and Francis, and so on, where on their website they have these journal finders where you can actually upload your abstracts and your keywords, and based on that they give you a list of journals under their publications that match with your work. um, it's helpful, but yes, keep in mind that these journal finders are only present within large corporate publishers, large in the sense that they have a large number of journals under them. So they can actually be used to match your research with the journals that are published by them specifically. So you won't be able to find journals published by independent publishers, societies, universities under these journal finders. So in that sense, it can be a limited approach. Now, yes, I would also recommend that you keep a list of all the journals that you come across, right? During this process while you're working within your field. Um, so you can actually keep an eye out for their CFPs, being aware of when and how CFPs are being published and when their deadlines are. That might actually help with the process of actually working through the CFP deadlines. Now, most of the journals also have the option of signing up to their mailing list. So you can actually get news about not just their publications, but the active CFPs that they have. Again, like Nikita mentioned, it's always good to keep a good like engagement with these academic communities, with editors, with journals, so that you can actually build a discourse with them. You can uh, with form this kind of an academic community, especially with those of who are working in your areas of interest, right? All right. So having said all of this, I want to actually turn to you and ask, we can do a Menti exercise. What resources or groups or like any of these like directories, indexes do you use to find journals or any sort of resources within your field? Can we, Shreya, can you help me out with Menti? Yes, thank you.
We have another list of our own resources. Whatever you reply here, we'll collate these along with our own resources that we are aware of as a team, and we'll send them to you after the talk. So, yeah, whatever you share, please feel free to write here.
Yes, and if these sources are something specific to your own field, it might also be helpful to mention which field or discipline. Okay.
I think I would also be interested in knowing if people's, whichever institutions you belong to, do they keep such lists for their scholars or not? Within our, I'm from Delhi University. Within our university, there was no such conversations apart from what student groups we had. So, are universities keeping some lists to aid their students? Again, what sort of resources are uh, referenced by the universities themselves to their students?
Feel free to open your mics to respond, or you can also leave a message. Professors used to share CFPs in WhatsApp groups, but never anything official.
Yeah, that's great. That's understandable.
So we have some WhatsApp groups, JSTOR, UPenn, the call for papers, um, care list. I'm assuming this refers to the UGC care list, which is currently discontinued. But yes, there are um, other lists that we can actually talk about. Wiki CFPs, HNet, yes, Google Scholar.
That's great. I
Uh,
think we can rolling. People can keep answering. The Menti will be open.
yes, yeah. All right. So you can, as Nikita mentioned, you can keep putting in your responses if you remember any other sources, and we will actually collate. We have a list of sources that we also could, we have also found useful that we thought can be useful for everyone as well. Okay. Yes. Some of these have already been mentioned. So yes, what we can do is collate the responses with our own list with whatever you have suggested, and share it with everyone after the meeting. Okay, so I have a certain websites, certain resources put up here, but do keep in mind that some of these sources, like the MLA International Bibliography, for example, these are accessible only to those who have memberships. Um, yes, there are indexes, directories, databases. There are also academic forums, HNet was already mentioned, mailing lists, journal finders that I have mentioned, and other sources that might be useful. Um, yes, so like I mentioned, not all of these sources might be open access, but I've also added, which I already talked about project knowledge, so I've added that in here as well. Now, it is a database of freely accessible, like online resources of different kinds of a range of different categories. So there are general resources that people can use to subject specific resources as well for students, teachers, and researchers. So yes, do take a look at this database. And if you have more suggestions that can go into these lists, we would be more than happy to actually update them. Yes, we can share this list with you later. Um, All right, so we talked about how we can find journals, or rather, like, find out about journals that are working within our fields, right? But that still doesn't answer the question of where to actually publish your research. How do you actually find a journal that is reliable, that is actually right for your work? So let's look at some considerations to account for before you submit your paper. Um, Firstly, we need to be clear on the purpose for our motivations, for the research, the reasons to publish actually. Um, for a lot of people, publications are required as part of, say, for example, their PhD programs, or it might be an eligibility criteria for admissions or jobs. Now, most of the times, these um, come with their own list of requirements. So if you need to publish for those purposes, keeping an eye out for those criteria would be required. So there are certain eligibility criteria, like universities, employers, or funding institutions might require you to publish in a journal that is indexed in certain lists, right? Like Scopus or Web of Science is what we generally hear of. Um, they might also say that you need to publish in peer-reviewed journals. Like I mentioned, the UGC Care List in India has been discontinued, but right now they mention that, okay, you need to publish your work in peer-reviewed journals for them to be considered, and universities have their own set of guidelines. Again, some of them might require you to publish your work in open access, again, in order to increase visibility of the research that is coming out of that institution, right? Another term that we come across usually is impact factor. Now, impact factor is a numerical value that's supposed to gauge the kind of impact a journal has. Now, when we talk about impact, this is calculated mainly in terms of the number of times the publications within that journal have been cited. So we need to also keep in mind that this is something that came up within the field of science, where research is more linear, in the sense that your work is always built on it. It needs to always take into consideration what is happening within that field of study, right? What has actually happened just before your work within that particular topic. But humanities or social sciences, to a certain extent, they don't work in the same way. Here you end up building upon your own perspectives and insights, right? And it's not necessarily linear in the same way that sciences might be. So impact of publications actually is thought of in a different manner, generally thought of in a different manner than just number of times that they have been cited, right? That the work has carried forward in that sense. But yes, it does remain a criteria in most places. But it is a contentious topic. A lot of societies, a lot of academic communities, journals do not ascribe to impact factor as a concept to understand the impact of the journal, right? Um, s- what I want to stress on here is actually that it is not helpful to just think about criteria in this sense in order to actually publish your work. Like Faizan and Diksha mentioned in our previous session on why to research and why to publish your work, there is a publish or perish culture within academia, yes, But if we only think about publications through this lens, we fall into the risk of um, the trend of actually publish to perish, right? We need to be more conscious of our motivations and reasons to publish beyond this practical reason, to use the framework that Diksha had given us, and actually think about intellectual and existential reasons for conducting research, and actually publishing your work as well. Now, this might be in terms of like, how do you want to better your own work by actually receiving feedback and validation for your work. Nikita has taken us through what the publication process might look like. So, what the benefits of that might be for your own personal reasons, for your like reasons in that sense, or perhaps you want to actually share your insights with the larger academic communities. These sort of reasons then become considerations in your quest to find the right journal that you can actually publish in, right? So you can think about how journals are thinking about publications, whether it matches with your own senses. All right. So moving on, another important consideration is the scope of the journal, of the CFPs that you're submitting to. Nikita has already talked about this. Failing this would lead to a disk rejection, right? Now, she actually mentioned it in the context of a particular journal, but when we are looking for journals, we can think about it in the same sense. But we need to understand that journals also might be different in the way that they think about their scope. There might be niche journals that publish research only within those niche subjects, right? Like to take the example that Nikita already gave us, a journal on Shakespeare, for example. Um, or there might be a journal with a broader scope, but they might have CFPs within that specific topic. Like, or there might be journals that actually accept submissions with a broader and more general scope within a particular field. So do remember to check the scope of the journal as well as the CFP that you're actually going to submit to make sure that it aligns with your own work. So that is another important consideration. I would also actually suggest going through previous publications, um, if they are accessible, that is, or even through abstracts to see what kind of research is being published. This will also help you see the level of research that is being published within the journal and whether that level of research actually matches your own work. Now, journals differ in the levels of research. We can understand like them in terms of undergraduate and graduate student journal, or you can look at whether it is a journal that publishes the works of established scholars, that prefer to publish the works of established scholars rather, or are they journals that actually accept submissions from all levels of scholarship? Now, figuring this out would actually help you take a call on whether your work, whether your level of research is actually a good fit for the journal that you're submitting to. Yes, again, depending on the kind of research that is being published or even the mode of publication that we have talked about, right? The audience of a journal changes. For instance, if you think about a college journal that only publishes in print, that might have a very limited audience, right? That might have college students of that, university students of that particular um, area. The circulation might not be as wide. Even if there are other subscription based print publications only, it might be widely circulated, but it's still the audience is limited to those who can actually afford these subscriptions or actually afford to be in institutions that have access to these publications, right? So the audience might be limited in that sense. Now, when we talk about online publications, they might have a wider reach, yes, but again, there are online publications that are behind paywalls that raise the same kind of questions again, right? Open access publications are accessible, to most scholars, so they might have a wider or a range of audience, a wider group of audience. So yes, we need to actually think about the models of publication in order to see where you want your research to reach. Whom are you writing for, right? And is i- what kind of journals can I actually publish in to reach the people that I actually want to reach with my publication? So thinking about these become important. Now, in order to assess these things, you end up going through the journal, its literature, the publications themselves, which actually will help you also figure out the credibility and quality of the journal. Now, it is important to consider credibility and also the quality of the journal because publishing with them means that you're associated with them. So, after all the work that you actually put into conducting your research to writing, you do want your publication to be credible, right? So, there are some things that you actually need to keep an eye out for in order to take that call on whether or not you want to submit to a particular journals. Now, some of these factors are non-negotiable; they are must-haves, so that you're actually publishing with a credible publisher, with a credible journal. And then there might be factors that actually indicate good quality or even excellence, right? So let's actually go over some of this. So for a journal publication, an ISSN is a must-have. You can find the ISSN if it's an online publication. You should be able to find the ISSN on the website easily. Or if it is actually a print copy, you should be able to find it on the cover page itself. Um, Now, so ISSN is something that you can keep an eye out for. Um, Also, try and look for previous publications from that journal, right? Unless you're submitting to an inaugural issue, you should be able to find previous publications from that journal. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be able to actually read or access these publications, but some kind of information about public papers that have actually been published within these journals. Another thing to keep in mind is the scope and the research area. Are they clearly defined? Um, is that clearly explained within the journal literature? Um, does the journal actually have a legitimate editorial board and editorial team? Um, are you able to find a way to actually contact the editors? These are information that you should be able to find if it's an online publication on the website, or if it is a print only publication, you should be able to find it in the front matter of the journal. Other things to keep an eye out for is whether the journal literature actually includes a peer review policy. Again, I'm not asking whether or not the journal is peer reviewed. There are journals that actually do not use peer reviews for their publications. But do they actually mention this in their journal literature, right? Are the publications peer reviewed or not? If they are peer reviewed, what kind of peer review is being followed there? Do they have an archiving policy? How is the journal actually archiving their publications in order to actually safeguard it, right? Um, Again, very important. Do they have a plagiarism policy? What about copyrights? Do they at least mention whether the copyrights belong to the author or the publisher? These are information that you need to keep an eye out for to check whether a journal is credible or not. Now, there are other factors that you might want to consider. Um, these would not discredit a journal as such, but it can still be indicators of their quality, right? One such indicator is whether or not they're indexed in known lists within specific disciplines or geography that they belong to. Journal journals generally get go through a process of getting checked. They get vetted for their credibility and quality before being included in these indexes. So that can be actually a sign of good quality. um, have also included AI policy. Do they have an AI policy? Now, this is something that could actually tell whether or not the journal is thinking about research and publications consciously, right? Whether they're able to actually keep up with the current trends and issues that are happening within academia. So, something like having an AI policy might be an indicator that they are thinking through these, they're actually working with the current trends in that sense. It is also a good practice, and I can't stress on this enough, to read previous publications, even if it is just abstracts, if you don't have access to the previous publications. This helps you assess the quality of research that is being published. Now, if you find that the publications are not edited or formatted well, that can be a red flag, right? Because editorial work is not happening in that sense. Other factors can be indicative of excellence. For instance, you can actually try and look at how the journal is thinking about their readership and searchability. Do they have unique identifiers like DOIs, for example? Do they have a self-archiving policy? Again, these are things that actually tell us whether the journal is putting effort into thinking about research and publications in general, what they mean and what their impact might be. Another factor could be their policy for retractions or corrections of previous publications. Again, this tells us how a journal is thinking about handling problems or issues, right? So these um, they don't discredit. Not having these wouldn't discredit a journal in any way, but these are still some things to give you an insight about how a journal is thinking about ethics, how they're working. So then, in that sense, they become factors for excellence. Okay, so we've talked about some things that help you assess the credibility, quality, and excellence of journals. So let's flip the dialogue. Let's talk about the darker side, right? The predatory behavior in journals. Um, yeah, can we actually go into Menti to discuss what you consider to be predatory behavior in journals? We can address those. Yes, I'll hand it over to Shreya to take us through the Menti.
Here is the QR you can use.
Yes. I can copy paste the link and the code again for those of you who have just joined us.
Okay, we have one response. Spam emails, didn't reply, suspicious promises. Too quick with their responses or no suggestions before publication? Yes. Asking for money. APC. Ill-maintained website.
Okay, while we are waiting for other responses to come through, let me talk about a few of these. Um, okay, so spam emails. Yes, we have come across a lot of like advertisements, spam emails that fill our inboxes from journals. Now, emails themselves that might not actually indicate that it is predatory. But what are they doing in those emails, right? Are they promising fast publications? Are they not representing the journal clearly? Are they actually misinforming about, say, for example, the kind of indexing or impact factor that they have? Um, those might be indicators of it being predatory. So, emails in themselves won't help you decide that the journal can be predatory. It might not. It might be a legitimate journal that is reaching out and sending an invitation mail. But yes, to look through what kind of information they're giving you. Is it legitimate? Is it something that, um, yeah. Does anyone else want to add to the point about spam emails?
No, you're perfectly right in that. Emails themselves don't mean that a journal is predatory, simply what the email contains. So they can just be updating you on their latest CFP, and that's completely fine. You can go and check the rest of the points on their website as to how good or how genuine the journal is on their website. But yeah, everything else that you said about predatory being about them actually making promises for quick publication and stuff like that, yes, that's definitely in the predatory list.
Okay. Didn't reply. Yes. That again, it depends on different factors. Um, are they not replying because there is no editorial team there, or are they not replying because they have too many submissions to get through? That is something that you won't just find out through one email, right? Suspicious promises, yes. We need to keep an eye out for any kind of promises that are being made, and think about how you want to actually check and cross check the information that they're giving you, what kind of services they're promising, what they're actually trying to do, what kind of work are they actually coming up with. Does that hold up is something that you need to cross check. Too quick with their responses or no suggestions before publications. Um, Again, that shows a lack of certain editorial work, but might not necessarily mean that it is a predatory behavior coupled with other things, right? That might, so that's something that you can take a call on based on other information as well. Now, asking for money. Sorry, Nikita, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just actually, I muted myself to simply say too quick with their response can also mean a list reject. So they haven't read your response. You can ask them for further feedback. They might reply sometimes. I know that a lot of journals don't, but still, you can try and create that conversation we talked about. No suggestion before publication. They should ideally talk to the authors, and well, I haven't come across a paper that never needed any sort of change. So, yeah, no suggestions before publication seems a bit suspicious. Uh, yeah, that's what I have to add.
Now, asking for money and APCs, these are interesting responses, and these are things that we actually need to talk about because it's not talked about in terms of publications. Like I mentioned, the different models of publication, right? So, initially, we had the traditional model where the readers uh, pay. So, readers uh, get a subscription to the journal. So the journal is then funded by the readers themselves. But then when we talk about research and knowledge, one of the questions that obviously arises is that it needs to be free, it needs to be freely accessible. So if we make um, research freely accessible to readers, how do we actually think about funding? Because publishing does require uh, funding. It does take, it does have its expenses, right? Um, so yes, journal publications sort of flipped that model over, and started. So the APCs as a system um, takes the charges for the publications from the authors, so that they can actually share their research with the public, right? So the idea of article processing charges is the charges the authors actually pay to editors, to journals, for making their work available to the public. Um, yes, it's a contentious topic, like Nikita has mentioned. Um, but it is a model that exists within publications. So asking for money, if it is something that is very clearly discussed in terms of APCs within their websites, it's clear how much they are actually charging for publishing articles or submissions of articles. Then it's not predatory. It's simply a model of publication. It's a funding mechanism that does exist within journal publications. But if they're actually asking money without um, these things, if they are asking money um, when they actually say that they don't charge APCs, that can be suspicious. Yes. Yeah. Does anyone else want to comment?
Beyond that, I think there's a personal bias as well. Like, if there's a journal coming out of India who's asking for APCs, we'll end up thinking of it as predatory. But if there's a journal coming out of, let's say, Oxford University Press, and that has an established APC of even, let's say, $1,000, you won't think of it as predatory. You would just think of it as unaffordable. So I think it's also about whether you look at it. If you're looking at it as a corporate product, most scholars would be like, oh yeah, it's coming out of there, that place, so it's okay. But if it's happening in a society journal, most people end up thinking of it as predatory. So the model itself does not make it predatory. How it is being used, what kind of charge it is, I think I would be okay with a journal that's open access and has certain affordable fees. But again, depends upon a lot of factors. It's not really black and white. It takes up a lot of criteria into it. So yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. eh, Like Nikita mentioned, if a journal is charging you APCs to publish a work without actually doing editorial work, without doing reviewing and upholding the rigor of research, then it can be predatory. It can slip into predatory behavior, that it can become exploitative in that sense, right? Yes, ill-maintained website. Um, Again, that in itself might not indicate that the journal is predatory in nature. But how we talk about it maintained, right? Like, is it a website that's actually giving you false information? Is the website just difficult to access? It might be a poor quality, but it might not necessarily be predatory. No CFPs or record of previous publications, suspicious, sure. Um, but yes, yeah. No review of articles before publication, publication without review or any suggestions, no reply to submissions, quick response. I think we covered most of these. No visibility of articles on Google, no mention of indexing. Um, with the last two, again, it might not be a journal that is established in terms of quality, but those in themselves might not necessarily mean that they are predatory.
Also, another thing is not all editorial teams and editors are very tech savvy. So even I have come across a couple of journals that are really good, but at the end of the day, their editorial teams weren't able to make a very fancy website or weren't able to do SEO to ensure that their that the articles were present on Google Scholar, and I think that's okay. They are harder to access after that. Sure, it's always better if you have a technical handle, but yes, this does not in any way necessarily mean that they're predatory in nature. It could actually just mean, as I said, they don't know the technology. So yeah,
Okay, yes. Let's continue talking about certain other indications for predatory behavior. I think we covered a lot of it already.
yes, Sharanya, your slides aren't visible.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Is it now?
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. All right. So yes, there are certain things we talked about: credibility, quality, and excellence, right? And we talked about like within your responses also, there are certain misunderstandings. There are certain ways in which we think about publications that might not that are opaque, that are not clear to us in the academic communities. So trying to see how to actually spot predatory behavior in journals. Again, make a note that I'm calling it predatory behavior in journals and not actually labeling them as predatory journals, because that there is a difference there. um, like, I want to actually re-emphasize that publishing with a journal means that you are actually associated with them. So what we need to understand is that publishing in non-credible journals means that your own work is also non-credible. So we might actually want to try and figure out how to avoid them, right? How to avoid falling prey to these predatory behaviors. Again, a lot of these information, like we've already discussed, would be something you can actually find through journal publications, the uh, print publications in themselves, or the journal literature on their websites. Um, Now a journal becomes like, we can talk about the predatory behavior of a journal if you can see a lack of any editorial work, which is why things like quick responses, quick publications without actually any reviews or editorial work happening become um, suspicious. They become a red flag. So yes, promise of quick publications in the mails that you receive, just take them with a pinch of salt, right? Because it might mean that they don't have a rigorous review and editorial process. Um, Again, publishing papers from different disciplines. So if you have an issue within the journal that has a paper on economics, on literature, and on, say, chemistry in the same place, without actually having a reason for like publishing them in the same place in the same issue, that means that there is no editorial work being done there, right? They're just publishing papers as in how they receive them, without thinking about what publications mean. So that again is indicative of predatory behavior. um, Sometimes there are cases where people are asked to add co-authors to their works in order to get published, in order to get an acceptance. That is definitely something to keep away from. Um, Now, if you we already talked about this, but yes, the false information on their website, on emails, on advertisements. about their editorial processes, about their policies, indexing, impact factor, those kind of information. If they're lying about those, if they are giving us false information about those, that is indicative of predatory behavior. So it is always important to not just check the journal literature themselves, right? It is also important to go back to the sources that we talked about and cross check whether these actually exist. If they're claiming that their scopus indexed, go to the scopus list and check whether they're actually scopus indexed. So cross-checking is something that you need to do to assess the journal before you submit. There is also a practice where journals incorrectly represent their own publications. So there could be journals with, like, say, a very similar sounding name and like website layout of a credible journal, or they might put up papers from different publishers within their website to make it seem like that is their previous publications. So we need to also be careful with those. Those are like it's the idea of like cloning or hijacking in that sense, is something that we need to keep an eye out for, that we need to actually cross check and verify before we submit. In terms of funding, one of the common practices that we also that is also talked about is that of double dipping. So here publishers charge for keeping the work open access. So they charge APCs from the authors or from the institutions, but they also have a subscription fee. So in that sense, they are actually um, it is an unethical practice. It is the practice of double dipping. It can be indicative of predatory behavior, right? Yes, so neither one of this criteria, like I mentioned, it's not enough to actually label them as predatory journals as such, right? So like checking the box for any one criteria does not necessarily mean that the journal is predatory. These are definitely certain problems that we need to be careful about when we are submitting, that we need to sort of avoid, predatory behavior that we need to avoid. But yes, if a journal checks multiple of these options, there is a higher chance that it is predatory in nature. I've also put up a link here, which is actually a checklist, a questionnaire of sorts. Um, there are 10 or so categories, and you can actually check yes or no, true or false on it. And they have a scale um, to assess whether the journal might be predatory or not. I can actually share this with you um, along with the list of resources that we will be sharing with you. So that's something that we can also, that you can go through before submitting your research.
I'm also putting it in the chat for anyone who wants to see it right now.
Thank you,
Just
Nikita. Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so that brings me to the end of all that I wanted to talk about. Thank you. I will hand the space back to Shreya.
Yes. Thank you, Sharanya and Nikita, both of you, for the talk. Um, I'm sure it has been very helpful and has given us, a clearer direction. We can open up for questions now. Yes, and there are some questions in the chat.
Definitely open up for questions. Diksha Fazan, please share your views. How did you, your perspective on what else should be talked about in how to and where to publish? And yes, we can have the questions.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to congratulate you both, for such extensive presentations. I mean, Nikita first because she spoke first. Thank you for walking us through the process of submitting to a journal as well as the publication process of a journal. It was really informative. And these important aspects of journal publication actually make us understand the working of a journal as such, how a journal works through different sorts of processes and all that, and the insight into handling the editorial steps that of course all the scholars are going to encounter once they start publishing their papers in journals. So publication of our work at any time is an effort towards having our voice heard, and the very rigorous process as it should be also. So I appreciate you addressing the aspect of rejection as well, because that is something that we may have to encounter no matter what level we are as at what level we are as scholars. So your presentation, I would say, was quite wholesome with respect to uh, the contribution that editors have to our papers, to our research, as well as the fundamental prerogatives of the scholars also when they are attempting to publish their paper. There was just few things. I mean, one question that I had was, how to actually become a peer reviewer for a continued engagement. But I think that question has already been asked, so you can answer it as well. And there was just one more thing, if all our papers, for example, are published in one journal itself, does it affect our CV, our portfolio in any way? We may like that journal and find it relevant also, but is it okay to publish all our papers in one journal itself, or is it not a practice which is quite good for the portfolio or something?
Okay.
Sharon,
Thank you.
I'll ask later. Maybe you can answer first.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the questions. The first one is simple. Figure out the journals that you like the work of. A lot of journals have forms or instructions as how you can be their peer reviewer. If you can't find such instructions, simply write to them. Preferably along with your CV and a list of interests, because peer reviews are matched to submissions as per their interest, and that piques the interest of the journal that, okay, this is the kind of scholar that has come to us and wants to be a reviewer. So it's always good to give your intro in a CV and what all you have done, what you're doing at present, as well as whatever you have researched on and will like to research on, your areas of interest. And you can just shoot a mail. Yes. So that's how you can be a peer reviewer. As I said before, I don't think there is a eligibility criteria for what level of research you need to be at to be a peer reviewer. I believe you can start peer reviewing as long as you're interested in research and you're ready to read research papers and give your honest feedback on them. Yes, you should learn to evaluate uh, research if you want to stay in the field of academia. Uh, Disha, can you share your second question again? Okay, I remember now. Whether you should be publishing in the same journal. I am not aware of any such practice which prohibits this. If the journal's good, if the journal is rigorous, why not? They'll have the same vetting process, same editorial process for each of your, papers. Again, you might be working in a field that's actually very relevant to that journal. So I don't think that's a problem at all. Yeah, so
Okay.
that should not be a thing, I believe. So yeah.
And if I have to now, I must thank Sharanya also because it was such an extensive catalog of resources that you presented, and of course the way you apprised all the listeners and all the participants over here on how to find the right resources to publish research was something which was really helpful. And it actually also provides me a very expansive view of the research landscape, and it gives me hope at least that with all the resources that you have given, that I'll be able to find certain authentic avenues to publish my research once I'm able to gravitate more deeply into my own engagement with the research interests, as well as understanding the possibilities that are available to the community of scholars. And one question which maybe that you can answer, which you if you find it relevant, you know, what are some of the effective, you can say, means and ways, or popular means and ways to promote your work, to promote your published research, or to share it with the larger community? How can that be done? I mean, that is one question that I want to ask.
Yes, so there are different places, different groups, different um, academic uh, forums where you can actually share your research. I think we would be familiar with ResearchGate and academia.edu where you can actually work on this. If your publication allows for self-archiving, um, then you can think about different places where you can actually archive your work and have it be visible for others. Again, depending on what kind of publication you are, what kind of policies that they follow, you can actually share it within your university databases, make it accessible within your university databases as well. Those might be. If you are part of academic communities which have the culture of actually sharing work, right? That can also be a place where you can actually circulate your publication. Again, if it is something that is acceptable within that group. Um, yeah, so that those are some of the ways I can think of right now. Anyone to add? Am I missing any others?
I think self-archiving, the point you make on self-archiving, Sharana, is rather important, and that's something that maybe we should talk a little more, bit more in detail. Like a lot of funders and grants and even universities have this criteria that wherever you may publish, even if you're publishing with a subscription-based journal, they like you to have like they need you to have the criteria of that publisher allowing you self-archiving so that
Mhm.
enter your research into the university database. I believe it's anyways a important criteria, even if your journal is not circulating, because in online publication you really don't know where your research is being read. How do you figure out, even in subscription, like after the publication, how many of you actually know how many people read your research or what happened to it? If you get really famous, if you get really established, people might start citing you. But before that, very few people get that famous that you will get start citing, right? Citations. So before that, where is your research going to? It just becomes something that you've published and something on your CV. So in order for that not to happen, I think self-archiving becomes very important. That you're able to maybe put it on archive.org, Arxiv, they call themselves Arxivs now, right? Uh, so all of that, maybe start a conversation on Xanadu that's come up a lot these days. Xanadu is starting to have a very, very rigorous academic community, I feel. Or if you are using things like ResearchGate or Academia.edu, maybe there as well. I'm not sure how. I have not used these sites, so I don't know how the dialogue goes there. But yes, so yeah, self-archiving is rather important. I you have published your work, you should have enough control over it that you know where to that you can take a copy and keep it somewhere, essentially.
Yeah. Um, Thank you, Nikita. Yes. Can we also add these resources to that list that we can actually circulate with
Yeah,
other?
definitely.
Make a
Yeah,
note of
I would
that.
also like to add to the question that the responses you made. I mean, I have also seen people writing. I mean, when we publish our research in journals, so it has a particular kind of a specialized audience. So we can also talk about our research in other popular domains like newspaper, columns, magazines. So that those domains do not in a way suppose a special audience. I mean, one can of course write about in, for example, in the context of India, one can make one's research for palatable for a popular audience through a scroll, we have a scroll website, journal, not a scroll, scroll.in. I believe, right? Newspaper, magazine. So there are different avenues also where people can write about their research and integrate with other popular understandings of things. Of course, the way one writes articles in such a scroll or newspaper columns will be of a different, slightly different nature, because one is writing for a different so-called layman audience. So that also helps us to popularize, uh, to get connected with larger audience, and then of course one can refer back to specialist studies that one undertakes in academia. So that one of the ways one can.
That's a very, very interesting point, Kazan. We don't publish research on these websites, but we definitely should. AN is another site,
Yeah,
AEIO.
yeah, right.
Yeah, they end up publishing about
It's a long
research,
form of
and
journalism,
their
right?
purpose is to put research in a way that everyone can read it rather than just researchers. So
Right.
that's great. Once you have done a research and you think it has a larger purpose and it might be of interest to a larger community of people who might not be in research as such, you could write a simpler and a more a piece that has a larger audience with a more outreach. So yeah, that's a very good idea. I haven't thought of that. Yes, thank you for that.
And also I agree with Diksha that both the sessions were amazing in the sense that you were. I mean, it was, yeah, it was really exhaustive in the sense it was widespread. It had it covered a lot of grounds, nuances, and it made me look. It made me realize the nuances of publishing, predatory, and whatnot. And there were so many different layers to what you presented today. And yeah, one more thing I would like to add to what there was a reference to DOI. Right. So even in the context of journals which we characterize as predatory, or those who publish without proper peer review process, and they especially end up publishing low quality in a way articles, they also, I mean, have they also sometimes have DOI number. So the very thing that a journal has this DOI, which I mean, it gives DOI number to every article, that does not in a way tell us that the journal is a good one. So DOI is something a journal can buy from a third party, and simply can give to the articles. So again, the presence of DOI on journals is never the mark of it being a good journal. So
Yes,
we need
that's
again
great.
to cross check. Yeah.
DOI is but a technical way of
Yeah.
circulating an article. Having a DOI is no mark of quality at all. So yes, it's a technical.
Yes.
Same for
Yeah.
ISSN. ISS is not a mark of quality of a journal. It's
Of course.
just a
Yeah.
technicality that you need to have. Is
True.
all.
True.
So, and thank you for your high words of praise, Kazan. We were just building on what Deeksha and you had done in the last session. So, yeah, your first session was good enough for us to build upon it in this manner. And I would like you guys to take up the first question we have had, because I believe this is more pertinent. You guys can actually answer this better. I'll just read it out loud for everyone. Can you please talk about the different types of academic publications, like journal papers, book chapters, conference proceedings, print and digital? Is there any kind of hierarchy or preference as such when it comes to the kind of publications in academia? So I'm thinking that they're trying to ask whether one publication type is better than the other, or there's some preference to one over the other. So yeah, please.
As a matter of fact, there is a unsaid sort of hierarchy. I won't call it hierarchy, but again, in the academic community, the way a book chapter is seen, and the way a journal chapter is, journal article is seen, is in a different way. So, book when we submit a book chapter, suppose I am coming out, I'm going to edit a book. So I will just share the call for book chapters, and you will submit me. So I am going to, in a sense, I mean, the process of that book information thing is one way or the other determined by the editor. So the quality, so to say, of course, if the editors are good and they're established scholars, so they will try to maintain a rigor. Otherwise, I mean, both come on a different plane. So with papers, I mean, they are considered to be they are supposed to be following rigorous process, peer review, and all that. It takes time to navigate the publishing process, as you have mentioned in your presentation. So I think, yeah, journal articles are preferred over book chapters, and even in the context of India, sometimes we get points for articles, but not for book chapters. So that is also a case, and I don't think there is any difference between print and digital thing. Both are, I think, on the same footing. But again, how certain proceedings are published, I mean, it needs to be seen in. I mean, it needs to be assessed on a case by case point. I mean, it cannot be generalized. All conference proceedings are going to be of a low quality, because there are conference proceedings, because there are conferences which are, I mean, of a stellar quality, and they do publish stellar quality publications. So one cannot simply generalize, but one needs to look into the rigor of the process and how things are meeting. Because sometimes in the context of book chapters, favoritism is a thing. Like if I am the editor, I know a few people, so will I will say, okay, okay, ठीक है, आप मुझे
It's the
भेजिए
bane
अपना.
of each field. That's the bane of each field. That happens to books, that happens to journals, that happens to
Yeah,
conferences.
but the perception with journals is that that favoritism is less likely to occur. Again, the question of retraction that we find in
Yes.
journal. Again, that is also because of favoritism and the way editors, special issue editors, or sometimes editors also bypass certain
That's
lines.
true. That's
Yeah,
very
so
true.
that
The concept started because, so I believe that the concept started wherein you were able to disprove scientific method, some scientific research. So they had to retract back publications, but now it has, trickled down to the practice you are talking about, that editors are not working well enough. They have to get retracted. Which is paradoxical in that a lot of indexes don't think of journals as rigorous enough if they have not had enough number of retractions. I was very surprised to find this out. If you don't have enough number of retractions, you're not publishing, right? I was like, if you have retractions, you're not publishing, right? So
and sometimes the retracted papers are cited more than the original papers. That is again a very paradoxical.
the industry is full of such, I don't know, eccentricities that I don't really understand. But yeah, we have
Yeah,
another.
Shahabuddin has a question, perhaps.
Yeah. Uh,
Mm.
Shreya, why don't you do the honors? You're
You're on
mute.
mute. You're on mute.
Sorry. Should I read the question or would you like to ask?
No, I want you to answer it as well.
Oh,
I think this is a question that everyone will have a different opinion on. Go ahead.
um, charging too much amount. I'm not sure. It would depend on you, I suppose, because it's not exactly an indication of quality or anything. Um so I wouldn't say to make a blanket rule about avoiding or not avoiding it. Perhaps like a case by case basis.